There is a particular kind of tiredness that comes from being reliable, not the tiredness of hard work, which sleep can cure, but the tiredness of being counted on so completely that no one thinks to thank you anymore. You have felt it, the moment when your effort became expected, when your kindness stopped being noticed because it had become the weather always there, requiring no comment. There is a heaviness in that, a heaviness that does not come from anything you carried in your hands, but from something you carried in your posture day after day without ever setting it down. Here is what almost no one will tell you. People do not take you for granted because you give too much. They take you for granted because of how you give, the manner, the posture, the small signals you send without knowing you are sending them. Being taken for granted is not a punishment for generosity. It is a response to something in your carriage, something in the way you hold yourself when you offer what you offer. You could give half as much and still be taken for granted, and you could give twice as much and be treasured. And the difference between those two lives is not the amount of the giving. It is the self-respect that sits underneath it. Most people believe the solution is to give less, to withdraw affection, to keep score, to become colder so that warmth becomes rare enough to be valued again. This is wrong, and it costs people their peace for years. The answer was never to shrink your heart. The answer is to change 6 quiet habits, none of which require you to say a single harsh word. You will not become smaller. You will not become bitter. You will become something the people around you did not expect, which is a person who no longer abandons themselves in the small moments. And that person is impossible to overlook. There are 6 of them. 6 habits so quiet that the people around you will not be able to name what changed, only that something did. You will not announce them. You will not explain them. You will simply begin to live differently, and the world will begin to treat you differently in return, the way it always does when a person's self-regard shifts. The change will feel invisible to you at first. It will not feel invisible to them. By the end of this, you will know what those 6 habits are, why they work when nothing else has, and exactly what to do before this day is over. Not someday. Today. Begin with the thing underneath all 6, because without it the habits are just tricks, and tricks wear off. People calibrate their treatment of you to the self-regard they observe in you. Read that again, slowly, because it is the hinge on which everything turns. Nobody treats you according to your true value. They cannot see your true value. What they can see is how you value yourself, and they match it. They meet you exactly where you have agreed to be met. If you treat your own time as endlessly available, they will treat it as endlessly available. If you treat your own comfort as the last thing that matters, they will place it last too. You taught them, not with words, with behavior. This is not a comfortable truth, but it is a freeing one. Because if the world is responding to signals you are sending, then the signals can change. You are not stuck. You were never stuck. You were simply broadcasting something you did not mean to broadcast, and the people around you were only doing what people do, which is to take you at the value you seem to place on yourself. There is enormous relief in this once the sting passes. It means the problem was never that you were unworthy. It means the problem was a set of habits, and habits can be unlearned at any age, by anyone willing to feel a little discomfort for a little while. Consider how this happens. It does not happen in the big moments. In the big moments, everyone behaves. It happens in the small ones. The little sigh when you agree to something you did not want to do. The way you apologize before you ask for anything. The speed with which you fill a silence. the eagerness in your voice when someone finally notices you. Each of these is a small confession, and people hear confessions even when they are not listening. They absorb them. They adjust. You send 100 of these signals a day, so many that you have long stopped noticing you are sending them, and the people around you have built their entire picture of you out of them. Think of it like a thermostat. You are constantly telling the room what temperature to keep, not by what you say, but by what you tolerate. When you tolerate being interrupted, you set the temperature. When you tolerate being last, you set it again. When you tolerate the joke with the little blade in it, you set it once more. And the people in the room simply live at the temperature you keep setting. They are not conspiring against you. They are reading a dial you did not know your hand was resting on. The moment your hand moves, the room changes, and it changes without a single argument. And here is the part that stings. The people who take you for granted are not usually cruel. Cruelty is loud and easy to see. What you are dealing with is something quieter and more common. Indifference that grew slowly in the gaps you left open. A person got used to you. Your presence became furniture, not because you are unlovable, but because you never asked to be seen as anything other than always available. Furniture does not get thanked. Furniture does not get missed until it is gone. And you have been furniture in rooms where you should have been a presence. And the difference between those two things is something you build, not something you are born with. Think about the difference between being liked and being valued, because this is where most people lose themselves. You can be liked and taken for granted at the same time. In fact, the most agreeable people, the easiest people, the ones who never cause trouble, are the ones most often overlooked. Being liked is about how comfortable you make others feel. Being valued is about whether they fear your absence. These are not the same thing, and chasing the first will never get you the second. You have poured years into being comfortable to be around, and comfort is a fine thing, but comfort alone teaches no one to value you. A cushion is comfortable. No one is afraid of losing a cushion. You have spent decades, perhaps, being liked, being easy, being the one who understands, who adjusts, who makes room, and somewhere along the way, being easy became being invisible. The reward for never being a problem was to stop being a presence. You made yourself so accommodating that there was nothing left to run into, nothing to notice, no edge for anyone to feel. And a person with no edges is a person the world flows around without ever slowing down. But there is something almost nobody sees here. The shift you need is not a shift in what you do for others. It is a shift in what you refuse to do to yourself. You stop abandoning yourself in small ways, dozens of times a day, and the abandonment other people have learned from you begins to end as well. They were only ever following your lead. Every time you overrode your own tiredness to say yes, you taught them your tiredness did not count. Every time you swallowed the slight, you taught them the slight was allowed. You have been the first one to leave yourself behind every single time, and the others simply followed you out the door. Self-respect is not a feeling you wait to have. It is a set of behaviors you perform whether or not you feel them, and the feeling arrives later, summoned by the behavior. This is the order of things, and most people have it backwards. They wait to feel worthy before they act worthy, and so they wait forever. You will not wait. You will act, and the worth will follow, because dignity is demonstrated, never announced. The pause comes first. The confidence comes after. The measured warmth comes first. The self-regard settles in behind it. You do not talk yourself into dignity. You behave your way into it, and one morning you notice it is simply there. The 6 habits are all forms of one thing. They are all ways of refusing to abandon yourself. That is the whole teaching. Everything after this is detail. The first habit is the pause before you answer. When someone asks something of you, there is a gap, a small window between the request and your reply. For most people, that window is closed instantly. The yes is out of the mouth before the mind has even considered the cost. This speed feels like kindness. It is not kindness. It is a nervous reflex, a fear of the empty air between the question and the answer, and people can feel that fear in you the way animals feel it. The pause changes everything. Not a long pause, a breath, a single beat where you look at the person, consider what they have asked, and then respond as if your answer were a decision rather than a reflex. That small silence tells them something they will not consciously register but will feel completely. It tells them your time is not automatic. Your yes has a source. It comes from somewhere considered, and that means your no is possible too. Why does this work when nothing louder does? Because the pause introduces the one thing that stops a person from being taken for granted, which is uncertainty about your consent. The moment your yes is guaranteed, it stops being a gift and becomes an entitlement. Nobody thanks the sun for rising. But the pause makes your yes a choice again. And a choice can always be withheld. And things that can be withheld are the only things people value. Scarcity is not a trick you play. It is simply the truth about your time made visible. Your hours are finite. Your energy is finite. The pause tells the truth about that finiteness, and the automatic yes tells a lie about it. There is something else the pause does, quieter still. It gives you back to yourself. In that single breath, you leave the other person's need for a moment and return to your own life, your own preferences, your own limits. Most people who are taken for granted have lost the habit of consulting themselves at all. The request comes, and they answer straight from the reflex, having never once checked in with the person the request will actually cost. The pause is the reunion with that person. It is you, asking you, before you answer them. And a person who consults themselves before answering is a person whose answer means something. Picture a person who, for years, answered every request in the same eager way. Someone would ask, and before the sentence finished, the answer was already climbing over itself to say yes, of course, absolutely, no trouble at all. And the more available that person became, the more the request grew, and the less anyone noticed the giving. Then something changed. Not the answers, the timing of the answers. A breath appeared where none had been. Just a moment of stillness, a considering look, and then a calm reply. Within weeks, the people around this person began to ask differently, more carefully, as though they had sensed, without being told, that the yes was no longer guaranteed. Watch what the pause does to the request itself. When someone knows your yes is instant, they ask for things carelessly, because it costs them nothing to ask. They over-ask. They ask for things they would handle themselves if they thought there was any chance you would say no. But the moment a considered pause enters your responses, the careless asking slows. People begin to weigh whether a thing is worth asking you for, because they can no longer be certain of the answer. And so, without your ever setting a single limit out loud, the demands on you shrink, filtered now through the other person's own second thought. So here is what to do. The next time anyone asks anything of you, do not answer immediately. Let one full breath pass. Look at them while it passes, then answer. That is all. You do not need to change your answer. You only need to change the speed of it. The pause does the work. The pause is composure made visible, and composure is the first thing people respect and the last thing they take for granted. And if you want to deepen it, add a single phrase, said calmly and without apology. Let me think about that. 4 words. They will not diminish you. They will do the opposite. They tell the world that your decisions happen inside you, on your own timeline, and cannot be rushed out of you by the pressure of a waiting face. The second habit is that you stop explaining yourself. Notice how much of your speech is justification. You cannot say no without a paragraph of reasons. You cannot decline an invitation without building a case, offering evidence, hoping the other person will accept your defense. You have become a lawyer for your own choices, arguing before a judge who never asks for argument, and every explanation you offer does the opposite of what you intend. It does not make you more understood. It makes you more available to be talked out of your own decision. Understand what an explanation actually communicates. When you explain a boundary, you are saying that the boundary is only valid if the other person agrees with the reasoning behind it. You are handing them the right to evaluate whether your no is acceptable. And a person committed to misreading you will always find your reasons insufficient, because their goal was never to understand you. Their goal was to move you. The more you explain, the more surface you give them to push against. The cost of explaining yourself to someone committed to misreading you is enormous, and you pay it in pieces so small you never see the total. Each explanation is a small surrender of authority. Each justification says, in effect, I am not sure I am allowed to want what I want, so let me convince you. And people hear that uncertainty. They hear it perfectly. It invites them to keep pushing, because you have told them, without meaning to, that your position is negotiable. Consider the structure of an argument that starts from your reasons. You say you cannot come because you are tired. They say you can rest tomorrow. You say you have too much to do. They say it will only take an hour. You say you are not feeling up to it. They say it will do you good to get out. Every reason you offered became a door, and they walked through each one in turn, until you were standing in a house you built for them, with no walls left, agreeing to the very thing you meant to decline. This is not because they are clever. It is because you handed them the blueprint. A reason is a handle, and a handle is made to be pulled. The quiet strength here is the sentence that ends. No is a complete sentence. That will not work for me is a complete sentence. I have decided against it is a complete sentence. You feel a pull, a strong physical pull, to add more, to soften it, to make it palatable. Resist that pull. Let the sentence end. Let the silence after it belong to the other person. That silence is not rudeness. It is restraint, and restraint is one of the most powerful things you own. There is a fear underneath the over-explaining, and it is worth naming, because once you see it, you can set it down. The fear is that if you do not justify yourself, you will be seen as cold, or selfish, or difficult. So you pile on the reasons like a peace offering, hoping to be forgiven for having a limit at all. But watch the people you most respect, the ones whose presence has weight. They do not over-explain. They say the thing plainly and let it stand. And they are not thought cold. They are thought self-possessed, which is the very quality you have been trying to reach by the exact opposite road. The reasons were never the price of being respected. They were the reason it kept slipping away. There was a person who could never say no without weeping out a long story of reasons. And the reasons never worked, because the people hearing them simply argued with each reason in turn. And the person was always eventually worn down, always eventually saying yes to the thing they had tried so hard to decline. Then this person learned to stop at the no, just the no. No story, no defense, no apology. And the strangest thing happened. The arguments stopped. There was nothing to argue with. A no without reasons cannot be reasoned away. The people who used to push simply had nowhere to push. What to do with this is simple, and it will feel unnatural at first. The next time you decline something, decline it in one sentence and then stop talking. Do not fill the silence. Do not offer the reason your mouth is aching to offer. Let the discomfort sit in the air. It will pass. And on the other side of it is a version of you that people stop testing because they have learned that your decisions are not up for debate. And when the pressure comes, as it may, do not defend. Repeat. Say the same short sentence again, calmly, unchanged. That will not work for me. The unchanged repetition is more powerful than any new argument, because it shows there is no crack to work at, no reason to dismantle, only a decision that has already been made. The third thing people miss is the habit of the unhurried response to disrespect. Watch what happens in the first 30 seconds of disrespect. Someone says something dismissive, something with a small edge of contempt in it, a little cut disguised as a joke, a slight so subtle you could almost pretend you did not hear it. And in that moment, most people do one of two things. They laugh it off, absorbing the cut, teaching the other person that cuts are free. Or they flare. They react hot and fast. And in reacting, they hand the other person the satisfaction of having gotten to them. There is a third way, and it is the only one that protects your peace. You go still. You do not laugh and you do not flare. You simply become quiet, and you let the disrespect hang in the air where the person left it, unclaimed by you, so that it returns to them. You do not carry it. You do not absorb it. You do not fight it. You let it exist, plainly, in the silence, and you let the other person sit with what they said. Silence does something. Argument cannot. When you argue with disrespect, you dignify it. You treat it as a position worth engaging, and in engaging you become an equal combatant, trading blows. But when you meet disrespect with stillness, you refuse it the fight it was looking for. You demonstrate that the insult did not reach you, that it fell short, that you occupy a place it cannot climb to. The person who insulted you wanted a reaction. Your stillness denies them the only thing they came for. There is a certain look that carries this stillness, and you already know it, because you have seen it on the rare people who cannot be rattled. It is not a glare. It is not a wounded stare. It is a level, unbothered gaze that lasts a beat longer than the other person expected, a gaze that says, without a word, I heard exactly what you said, and it did not move me. Then you look away, or you continue what you were doing, or you change the subject to something wholly ordinary. The message underneath is unmistakable. What you just did was so far beneath a response that I am not going to give it one. And that message lands harder than any comeback ever could. This is not passivity. Do not confuse it with passivity. Passivity is when the insult lands and you pretend it did not. Stillness is when the insult does not land because you have withdrawn the target. You are not swallowing anything. You are declining to participate in your own diminishment. There is an ocean of difference between the two, and everyone watching can feel which one they are seeing. Passivity has fear in it, a shrinking, a hope that if you make yourself small enough, the unpleasantness will pass. Stillness has no fear in it at all. It has the weight of a person who simply does not need this person's approval, and therefore cannot be hurt by their contempt. Consider a person who, whenever slighted, felt the need to correct the record, to explain why the slight was unfair, to restore, through words, the respect that had been taken. And the more this person defended their own dignity out loud, the smaller they seemed, because dignity that has to be argued for looks like dignity in doubt. Then this person stopped defending. When the contempt came, they simply looked at the person, held a calm and unbothered silence, and moved on as though nothing worth responding to had occurred. And the people who used to slight them began to feel, in that silence, a strange discomfort. They had struck at something and found it unmoved. There is nothing more disarming than a person who cannot be provoked. The discernment here is knowing that not every disrespect deserves a response, and most deserve none at all. Your composure is not something you spend on every small provocation. It is something you keep precisely by not spending it. Think of it as a reserve. Every time you react to a small slight, you spend a little of it, and you look a little less composed. Every time you let a small slight pass through you untouched, the reserve grows, and your presence grows heavier with it. So the next time someone tests you with a small contempt, do not answer it. Go quiet. Let your stillness be the whole reply. Then continue as if you had not been touched, because in the way that matters, you have not. You are halfway through the 6 now, and you may notice they share a spine. Each one is a form of withholding. The pause withholds your instant yes. The end of explanation withholds your justification. The stillness withholds your reaction. This is not coldness. This is the discovery that presence is built as much from what you decline to give as from what you offer. And the people who never learn to withhold anything are the people who are never valued for anything. A person who withholds nothing has nothing left that is theirs, and a person with nothing that is theirs has nothing anyone can want, because they have already given it all away for free. The 4th habit is that you keep some of yourself back. There is a belief, a generous and mistaken belief, that intimacy means total availability, that to love someone or to be a good friend or a devoted family member means holding nothing back, being an open book, always reachable, always transparent, always there. And people who believe this give and give until there is nothing left that belongs to them alone. And then they wonder why they feel used rather than cherished. A person with no interior, no private territory, no part of themselves held in reserve, becomes fully known, and fully known too quickly becomes fully predictable, and fully predictable becomes taken for granted. This is not about secrecy or games. It is about the simple dignity of having a self that does not belong to everyone, a solitude that is yours, a stillness at your center that you do not broadcast, do not perform, do not offer up for approval. Think about what solitude returns to a person who has spent decades being needed. It returns them to themselves. It reminds them that they existed before they were useful and will exist after. And that memory changes the carriage. A person who has spent time alone, comfortably alone, chosen alone, walks differently. They do not cling. They do not need the room to notice them. Their presence has weight because it is not desperate for company, and that weight is felt by everyone around them. There is a paradox in this that most people never grasp. The more you need someone's attention, the less they give it, and the less you need it, the more they offer it. Neediness repels the very thing it reaches for. When you no longer require the room to notice you, the room begins to notice you, because you have become the one person in it who is not performing for its approval, and that self-containment is magnetic in a way that effort never is. You cannot fake this. It grows only in real solitude, in hours truly spent alone with yourself, until being alone stops feeling like a lack and starts feeling like a home you can return to whenever you choose. This is why withdrawal is not defeat. When you step back, when you take an evening for yourself, when you become slightly less available, less immediately reachable, you are not sulking and you are not punishing anyone. You are reclaiming the part of yourself that makes you valuable in the first place. The moon is not diminished by the nights, it is not full. There is a rhythm to presence, and people who are always at full brightness give the eye nothing to adjust to. What is constant becomes invisible. This is a law of perception as much as a law of relationship. The thing that never changes fades into the background, and you have spent years never changing, always there, always warm, always on, and so you faded. There was someone who prided themselves on always being available. Phone always answered, door always open. Every request met, every need attended, every moment of their time claimable by anyone who asked. And they could not understand why the people they gave everything to seemed to appreciate them the least. Then they began, quietly, to keep some evenings for themselves, to not answer every call the instant it came, to have parts of their life that were simply theirs, unshared, unexplained. And the people around them, sensing this new private territory, began to treat the time they did give as something valuable because it had become something finite. Notice what a private life does to the way you are perceived. When people can account for every hour of your day, when they know you will be reachable, when there is no corner of your life they cannot see into, you become a known quantity, and known quantities are managed rather than valued. But when there are hours of your week that belong only to you, that you do not narrate or report on, a quiet mystery returns to you, not a mystery you manufacture, a real one, born of a real inner life. And people lean toward that. They wonder about it. They stop assuming they have all of you, and the moment they stop assuming that, they stop taking the whole of you for granted. So begin to keep some of yourself back, not out of spite, but out of self-respect. Have an hour that is yours. Do not report on it. Do not narrate it. Let there be a part of your day, your week, your inner life that belongs to no one but you. The detachment this builds is not coldness. It is the quiet strength of a person who knows they are complete on their own. And completeness is never taken for granted because it can never be possessed. Guard this hour as you would guard anything precious. When someone asks for it, you do not have to explain what it is for. It is enough that it is yours. The fifth habit is that you let people feel the consequence of their treatment of you. Here is where so many good people go wrong. When someone treats them poorly, they respond by being even kinder. They think that if they are gentle enough, understanding enough, forgiving enough, the other person will feel the contrast and correct themselves. This almost never happens. What happens instead is that the poor treatment becomes free. It costs the other person nothing, and things that cost nothing continue. Consequence is not cruelty. This is a distinction you must hold clearly. A consequence is simply the natural result of a person's behavior, allowed to reach them instead of being absorbed by you. When someone is dismissive and you respond with the same warmth as always, you have absorbed the consequence. You have paid for their behavior so they do not have to. And a person who never pays for how they treat you has no reason on earth to change it. The most powerful consequence is not anger. It is the withdrawal of your warmth, not coldness, not punishment, not a scene, simply a quiet recalibration. The person who takes you for granted has grown used to a certain temperature from you, a reliable heat that arrives no matter what they do. When that heat quietly cools, when your enthusiasm becomes measured, when the eager brightness in your response becomes calm and even, they feel it immediately, even if they cannot name it. Something has changed. The unconditional supply has become conditional, and that recognition does more than any confrontation ever could. Understand why this works when kindness fails. The person who mistreats you has built their behavior on a prediction, the prediction that no matter what they do, your warmth will be there, unchanged, waiting. That prediction is what makes the mistreatment safe. It is a bet they cannot lose. The moment your warmth begins to move in response to their conduct, the bet becomes uncertain. And uncertainty is the one thing that makes a person pay attention. They no longer know what they will get from you, and so they begin, for the first time, to consider how they are treating you. You did not lecture them into this. You simply stopped guaranteeing the reward. This requires you to walk away, sometimes, from the impulse to smooth things over. When there is tension because of how someone treated you, the temptation is to be the one who fixes it, who reaches out, who restores the comfort. Resist this. Let the discomfort belong to the person who created it. Let them sit in the cooler air for a while. This is not manipulation. It is the simple refusal to rescue someone from the natural results of their own conduct. You are not required to make disrespect comfortable for the person who dished it out. The hardest part of this is the silence you must let stand. When the warmth cools and the discomfort settles between you, everything in you will want to rush in and repair it, because you have spent your whole life being the one who repairs. The tension will feel like your responsibility, as if you had caused it, as if it were your job to dissolve it. It is not your responsibility, and it is not your job. The tension belongs to the person whose conduct created it, and if you rush to dissolve it, you take back ownership of a debt that was never yours. Let it sit. Let it be uncomfortable. The discomfort is doing work that your words never could. There was a person who, whenever a loved one treated them carelessly, would rush to repair the closeness, would overgive, would work to earn back a warmth that had been withdrawn by the other person for no reason. And the pattern never broke, because the careless one learned that carelessness would always be met with more effort, more affection, more anxious repair. Then this person stopped repairing. When they were treated poorly, they simply became quiet and even and slightly distant, and they waited. They did not explain the distance. They did not announce it. They just let it exist. And the other person, feeling the withdrawal of a warmth they had taken for granted, began, for the first time, to reach. So the next time someone treats you with less than you deserve, do not increase your effort. Decrease it, quietly, without a word. Let your warmth become measured. Let them feel the temperature drop, not forever, not as punishment, but as an honest signal that your kindness is a response to how you are treated and not a fixed feature of the landscape. This is discernment applied to affection, and it teaches people the true price of your warmth. And when they correct their conduct, as many will, let your warmth return, freely and without a grudge. The cooling was never revenge. It was information, and once the information is received, there is no need to hold the cold in place. The sixth habit is that you stop seeking to be understood. This is the deepest one and the hardest, so sit with it. Much of the exhaustion of being taken for granted comes from a hunger to be understood. You want the people around you to grasp how much you do, how much you carry, how much you have sacrificed. You wait for the acknowledgement. You drop hints. You describe your tiredness, hoping someone will finally see, and the acknowledgement never comes, or comes too small, and the hunger deepens. Release it. Not the desire for good treatment, but the desire to be understood by people who have shown you they will not understand. There is a peace on the other side of this release that has to be felt to be believed. When you stop performing your worth for an audience that refuses to see it, you stop handing that audience power over your sense of self. Your dignity becomes internal. It stops depending on being witnessed. Understand what happens when you seek to be understood. You place the verdict on yourself in someone else's hands. You make your peace contingent on their recognition. And if they are committed to not recognizing you, and some people are, then you have chained your well-being to a door that will never open. The freedom is in walking away from that door, not slamming it, just walking away, calmly, and building your sense of worth somewhere the other person cannot reach. There is a specific kind of person this applies to most, and you already know who they are in your life. They are the ones who, no matter how clearly you speak, hear something other than what you said. The ones who turn your reasonable request into an attack, your boundary into a betrayal, your calm into coldness. You have spent years trying to find the words that would finally make them see you rightly, and there are no such words, because the misunderstanding is not a failure of your explanation. It is a choice they are making. Once you accept that it is a choice, you stop searching for the sentence that will change it, because you understand at last that no sentence can change a choice the other person is determined to keep making. This is the highest form of detachment, and it is not cold at all. It is the warmest thing you can do for yourself. You continue to be good, to be kind, to be generous, but you do it now from your own standards rather than for applause. Your giving becomes clean. It no longer has a hook in it, no longer waits for a return, no longer keeps a secret ledger of unacknowledged sacrifice, and people feel this too. They feel that your kindness is no longer a bid for approval, and paradoxically, they begin to value it more, because it has become the gift of someone who does not need them to notice. There is a lightness that comes with this release, and it surprises everyone who reaches it. For years, the weight was not the giving. The weight was the waiting. The waiting to be seen, the waiting to be thanked, the constant background ache of a recognition that never arrived. When you set down the waiting, the giving becomes light again, almost joyful, because it is finally free. You give because it is who you are, not because you are trying to earn a verdict from a jury that will never return. And a person who gives from that freedom has a presence that people cannot stop noticing, precisely because they can tell it asks nothing of them. There was a person who spent years aching to be understood by someone who would never do the work of understanding them. Every conversation was an attempt to be finally, truly seen. And the seeing never came, and the person grew smaller and more bitter with each failed attempt. Then one day they simply stopped. They decided that their worth was not on trial, that they did not need this particular verdict, that they could know their own value without a witness to confirm it. And in that stillness, something settled in them that had been restless for decades. The endurance they had shown all those years finally became peace. So here is the last thing to do. Choose one person from whom you have been hungering for understanding and quietly release them from that job. Stop explaining your worth to them. Stop waiting for them to see. Not with anger, not with a declaration, just an inner letting go. Let your dignity stop depending on their recognition. This is the quiet strength that no one can take from you, because it lives in a place other people cannot enter. Now, how to put all 6 into practice? Because knowing them and living them are different countries, and most people visit the first and never move to the second. Begin with the smallest actions, the ones that cost nothing and no one else can even see. These are the private habits, the ones you build alone before anyone notices. Start with the breath before the answer, because it is the easiest and it retrains everything else. Every request, every question, one breath before you respond. That is the whole practice. It will feel like an eternity in the beginning. It will feel rude, even. It is neither. It is composure, and composure is a muscle that grows with use. Add to this the practice of the unfinished apology. Notice how often the word sorry leaves your mouth for things that require no apology. Sorry for taking up space. Sorry for having a need. Sorry for existing in someone's way. For the next while, catch the reflexive sorry before it escapes, and simply do not say it. Replace it with nothing, or with thank you where thanks would fit better. Instead of sorry I am late, try thank you for waiting. The shift is small and it rewires how you carry yourself, because every needless apology is a small bow, and you have bowed enough. Practice, too, the art of the shorter answer. When you speak, especially when you decline or set a limit, cut your sentences in half. Whatever you were going to say less of it. Let your words be fewer and let them land with more weight. People who talk too much, who over-explain, who fill every silence, are people who do not trust that their bare word is enough. Trust that it is enough. Say the thing and stop. The restraint will feel like a loss at first and reveal itself as a power soon after. There is one more private habit worth building, and it is the practice of the held gaze. Most people who are taken for granted look away first. In conversation, when there is any tension, their eyes drop, their voice climbs a little at the end of sentences, turning statements into questions, asking for permission they should not have to ask for. Begin to notice this. Let your gaze rest steadily when you speak. Let your statements end downward, as statements, not upward, as pleas. Stop softening your voice into a question when you have said something true. These are the smallest of physical habits, and they broadcast more about your self-regard than any words you could choose. The body speaks first, and the body has been apologizing for you for years. The second category of action is the relational, the things others will begin to feel even if they cannot name them. Here you begin to let people experience the natural consequences of their conduct. This does not mean confrontation. It means the quiet recalibration of your warmth to match their treatment of you. When someone is generous with their respect, be generous with your warmth. When someone is careless, let your warmth grow measured and calm. You are not punishing. You are simply being honest with your presence about how their behavior lands. In this same territory, begin to become slightly less available, not unreachable, not cold, just less instantly, endlessly at hand. Take a little longer to reply. Keep an evening. Have a plan that is only yours. The people who love you well will adjust without complaint. The people who only valued your availability will reveal themselves through their reaction, and that revelation is a gift, because it shows you who was there for you and who was there for what you provided. Discernment comes precisely from this kind of small experiment. Watch closely. In this experiment, who becomes indignant? There is a particular reaction you will see in the people who took you for granted the most, and it is a flash of offense when you become slightly less available. They feel it as a loss of something they were entitled to. That indignation is the clearest information you will ever receive about a relationship, because it tells you that your availability was never received as a gift. It was received as a right, and a person who treats your kindness as a right they are owed will always resent the moment you exercise your freedom over it. Let them resent it. The resentment is showing you exactly where you were being consumed rather than cherished. And when disrespect comes, as it will, meet it with stillness rather than heat. This is relational work of the highest order. Someone tests you, and instead of the flare or the swallow, you go quiet. You hold a calm and level gaze. You do not reward the provocation with a reaction. You let the silence do what no argument could. Then you continue as though your peace were never in question, because you have decided that it is not. Practice this on the small slights first, the ones that barely register, and by the time a larger one comes, the stillness will be yours already. Learn also the relational habit of the graceful exit. There will be conversations that turn, that begin to circle toward disrespect, toward pressure, toward a place your peace should not go. You do not have to stay in them. You do not have to win them. You can simply end them, without drama, without a slammed door, with a quiet sentence and a calm departure. I think we should leave it there. I am going to step away now. Then you go. The ability to leave a conversation you are not required to finish is one of the great protections of your peace, and most people have never given themselves permission to use it. Give yourself that permission. You are not obligated to remain present for your own diminishment. The third category is the internal, the deepest work and the most permanent. This is where you build the self-regard that all 6 habits ultimately express. It begins with solitude. Spend time alone on purpose, not waiting for it to be forced on you, but choosing it. Sit with yourself without a screen, without a task, without a voice in your ear. It will be uncomfortable at first, because you have spent so long being needed that being alone can feel like being nothing. Stay with the discomfort. On the other side of it is a self that does not need an audience, and that self is unmistakable to everyone who meets it. Within this internal work, practice releasing the hunger to be understood. Each time you catch yourself wanting to explain your worth, to justify your tiredness, to make someone finally see how much you do, gently set the hunger down. Not the good work, just the need for it to be witnessed. Do the thing and let it go unseen. This is a form of detachment that feels like loss and becomes freedom. Your peace stops living in other people's recognition and comes home to you where it belongs and where no one can take it. And build, in these quiet hours, a set of standards for how you will be treated. Standards you hold without announcing, not rules you post on the wall for others, lines you know in yourself. This is where I bend, and this is where I do not. This treatment I accept, and this I quietly walk away from. Standards held privately do not need to be defended, because they are not up for discussion. They simply shape your responses, and people read them in your carriage long before you would ever have to speak them. Standards are the architecture of self-respect, and they are built in solitude, not in argument. There is a final piece of internal work, and it is the quiet practice of self-respect toward yourself when no one is watching. How you speak to yourself in the privacy of your own mind sets the floor for how much disrespect from others you will tolerate. If you are your own harshest critic, if you apologize to yourself for your own needs, if you treat your own tiredness as an inconvenience, then you have already agreed to be treated that way, and the world will simply match the agreement. Begin to speak to yourself the way you would speak to someone whose dignity you respected. This is not vanity. It is the root system of everything else. You cannot demonstrate a self-worth to others that you have not first extended to yourself in the quiet. Notice that not one of these actions requires you to raise your voice. Not one requires a confrontation, a speech, an ultimatum. Every single one is quiet. This is the whole design. The loud methods, the demands and the scenes and the declarations, they announce a self-worth that is not yet real, and people can tell. The quiet methods demonstrate a self-worth that has already taken root, and people can tell that too. Dignity that shouts is dignity in doubt. Dignity that is quiet is dignity that has stopped needing permission. Now consider what happens if you do none of this. If you close the sound and go on exactly as before, giving without pause, explaining without end, absorbing every slight, available to everyone always, hungry to be understood by people who will not do the understanding. There was a person who spent a lifetime being the reliable one, the one who never said no, the one who carried what no one else would carry, who remembered the birthdays and made the calls and smoothed the conflicts and asked for nothing in return. For decades, this person believed that the giving would eventually be repaid, that one day the people they had poured into would turn and pour back, that the sacrifice was building something, an account of goodwill that would come due when it was needed. That day never came. When this person grew old and their usefulness began to fade, they discovered the terrible arithmetic of a life spent being taken for granted. The people they had given everything to did not gather round. They had never learned to value the giver, because the giver had never taught them to. The giving had been the weather, always there, and you do not thank the weather, and you do not miss the rain until the drought is long and total. The saddest part was not the loneliness, though the loneliness was real. The saddest part was the recognition, arriving too late, that it could have been different, that the giving had not been the problem. The manner of the giving had been the problem. A lifetime of yes, without a single considered pause. A lifetime of explaining, apologizing, absorbing, staying available, waiting to be understood. A lifetime of teaching everyone around them that this person's worth required no acknowledgement because it demanded none. Sit with the arithmetic of that life for a moment, because it is the arithmetic you are being offered a chance to change. Every unconsidered yes was an entry in a ledger no one else was keeping. Every swallowed slight was a small permission granted. Every apology for existing was a lesson taught. The sum of a life is made of these small entries, thousands upon thousands of them, and this person had spent every one of them teaching the world that they could be had for free. The tragedy was not a single betrayal. It was 10,000 tiny surrenders, each one so small it seemed not to matter, adding up to a total that mattered more than anything. Do not let this be the shape of your remaining years. You are not too old to change the signals, and the people around you are not too fixed to respond. This is the mercy in the whole matter, because the treatment you receive is a response to what you broadcast. And you can change what you broadcast, starting with the very next interaction. The world recalibrates faster than you would believe when a person's self-regard shifts, not because the world suddenly cares more, but because the world was always only reading you, and now you are giving it something new to read. The person who endures is not the one who gives the most. The person who is valued is not the one who is most available. Value flows toward self-respect the way water flows downhill without effort, following a law older than any of us. Build the self-respect quietly in the 6 ways you have now been shown, and the value follows. Not because you demanded it, because you finally stopped teaching people they could live without it. Before this day ends, do 3 things. First, the next time anyone asks anything of you, take 1 full breath before you answer. Just 1. Let the pause exist. Do not rush to fill it. This single change, practice from today, begins to teach everyone around you that your yes is a decision and not a reflex. Second, find 1 apology you are about to make for simply existing, for taking up space, for having a need, and do not make it. Swallow the reflexive sorry. Let the moment pass without your small bow. Notice how it feels to stand at your full height in a moment where you would normally have shrunk. Third, take 15 minutes alone today, on purpose, with nothing in your hands and no voice in your ear. Sit with yourself. Let it be uncomfortable. This is the beginning of the solitude that returns you to yourself, and everything else grows from that root. 3 small things. None of them loud, none of them requiring a single word to another person. And yet by the time you sleep tonight, you will already be carrying yourself differently, and the people who have taken you for granted will begin, without knowing why, to see you again.